Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Fallen London. Today we're going to be carrying on with July's exceptional story, The Stolen Song. While the rumpled barrister spends her evenings in chambers in order to work on trial strategy, you have an opportunity to investigate your new leads. We can pay a visit to the oldest friend. The accused Contralto claims her friend can credibly confirm she's telling the truth about the song. The defense could do with a credible witness, if that's what she actually is. Or we can visit the dockside pub, as advised by the concerned observer wrote the damp note. Let's pay a visit to the oldest friend. You recognize the address of the music hall. It's the one you were at the night before the trial. You head off from the courthouse to the theatre district at a brisk pace. After a day in court marred by lies and confusion, perhaps your client's oldest friend can finally provide some true and clarifying details about this case. A ticket seller ushers you past noisy dressing rooms to the office of the manager, your client's oldest friend. A woman in late middle age, she is dressed elegantly in midnight blue silk. Her grey, striped hair tightly wound into a business-like bun behind her head. Seated at a daintily carved walnut desk, she inspects a large ledger through her gold-rimmed lorgnette. Behind her on the wall hang several silver-framed photographs of elaborately dressed men and women, some of them featuring comical props or poses. The wall to the left bears a tiny window, light from which illuminates a crystal decanter on a side table nearby. The ticket seller interrupts his employer to announce you. "Pardon me, miss, but it's that barrister's investigator come to see you." Pausing her inspection of the accounts, the woman carefully puts down her lorgnette to inspect you instead. We can ask her how she knows the accused Contralto. The accused Contralto calls her oldest friend. You must know your client and her history well. The oldest friend rises from her desk and turns to approach the wall behind her. "This is us, soon after we met," she says, raising a hand to gently rest it on one of the hanging photographs. The image shows her as a younger woman, posed beside an adolescent girl, who bears a clear resemblance to your client. "She just appeared one day to auction for a role in one of our shows. Such depth and richness in tone. She was extraordinary." She turns from the photograph to look at you, as if making sure you understand. "A true contralto voice is rare in a girl, very rare indeed. Audiences have never heard the like before." The oldest friend goes on to describe how the accused contralto rose quickly to become one of the biggest stars of the London music hall. Indeed, so valuable is your client to the theatre now, they instructed their solicitor to retain a top barrister to defend her. They did? How did they get our barrister? Okay. Does she know the song? Does she know anything that could help your case? The oldest friend shakes her head and frowns. "That song is absolutely hers, and everyone knows it," she asserts, prodding the polished surface of her desk with a finger. She explains how the accused Contralto's bird song was first heard several years ago, when she sung it at her audition. "She only performed it in public after I persuaded her to. I said, 'Why don't you sing them that lovely song you once sang for us?' It made her sad as a girl, that song, but it seemed a shame not to share it." The oldest friend looks away and draws a trembling breath. "So if I hadn't... Well, there's no use crying over spilt milk now, is there?" We can just probe the oldest friend about her honesty. Share your concern that your client has not told you her full story. Go with that one. The music hall manager sits down at her desk and sighs. "You wouldn't know it to look at her on stage, but she's a very private person," the oldest friend explains. "If I ask about her early days, she'll change the subject, or she'll tell me one thing, then tell me something different a while later. Once she told me she was an orphan, but then another time she mentioned how her family were living at sea on a ship." The oldest friend shakes her head and shrugs a little. She has her reasons, I'm sure, she adds. There's many an artist I've known that's had hard beginnings they want putting behind them. Living on a ship at sea. We can ask her to testify in the trial tomorrow. If she is as convincing as she appears, she will make an excellent witness. I will certainly come to testify if you think that it will help, says the oldest friend with an earnest frown and a nod. She then urges you to let her know if ever there is anything else the rumpled barrister requires that could help with the case. By the by, she says as you motion to leave, my bookkeeper has some queries regarding some of the expenses listed in the barrister's last bill, but I'm sure it will be easily resolved, she adds. You bid the oldest friend goodbye and head out on your way. Now it's time to go visit the Dockside pub. As advised by the concerned observer who wrote you the damp note, you arrive at the address written on the note, a small, dingy pub bordering the wharf of a dock. You'd expect such a pub to be bustling with raucous sailors, but when you push the door open, you are greeted by no sounds of glasses breaking, nor any fighting or carousing. Just a half a dozen sailors sitting silently as they listen to a woman sing. Her song is one you've heard before. A little bird, she sings so sweet, a voice so pure, 'twould make you weep. The lamplight flickers and a haze of tobacco smoke momentarily clears. The singer is not the accused contralto, nor is it the aggrieved soprano. It's a drowny. It's a drowny? I suppose I should have seen that coming. Continue listening to her song. Could it really be the same as the one currently being contested at trial? As though it tore at my heart to stop her sharing her art. The thought of losing her filled me with fear. It is the contralto's song about the bird, but where your client's song ends, the drowny song continues, with additional verses that you have never heard before. But one day I came home to find my little bird had flown. Still singing, the drowny now drifts out the door and onto the wharf outside. The barman rushes to block the exit of entranced sailors attempting to follow her. Despite this, one of them manages to slip out the door. Through the pub window, you can see the drowny approaching the wharf's edge, the errant sailor close behind her. Entranced sailors are ambling gently towards the door of the pub. They are following the doleful song of the drowny, who is now outside, leading one of their fellows to the edge of the wharf. We should probably attempt to rescue the sailor, shouldn't we? The publican has his hands full barring the pub door. You could nip out through the window and onto the wharf. While the entranced sailors throng the door, you discreetly pull open the window and pull out unnoticed. Now on the wharf, you rush forward and yank the sailor back from the edge. Moments later, you hear a splash as the drowny drops into the sea. The sound breaks the sailor from his trance. What was I? Where was I? The sailor looks around himself in a daze before turning to you. It was that blooming drowny again, wasn't it? Well, thank you kindly. If it hadn't been for you, I'd be... The sailor's gaze drifts away from you towards the light in the window. Begging your pardon, but I've need of a drink, he says, and makes his way, a little unsteadily, back to the safety of the pub. The sailor's pub, now free from the drowny's influence, begins to return to normal. In one corner of the room, a jug of ale is knocked over and becomes the subject of dispute. In another, sailors begin slurring a sea shanty. Well, let's ask the publican about the final verses of the song. Perhaps he remembers them. The publican, now back behind the bar, pulls a pint and hands it to the trembling sailor with a kindly nod. His protective gaze then shifts to his other patrons, passing from one to another as if to reassure himself that all his charges are now safely back to normal. Grateful for your help on the wharf, he is happy to answer your questions. I can't say I remember the exact words, the publican tells you, but it's something about a bird flying away in the end. One day I come home and the bleeding bird had flown, or something like that. The rescued sailor, who is listening, adds an affirming grunt. And there's stuff about how it was wrong of her to keep it all caged up and how she hopes it's out there somewhere, singing its little heart out, continues the publican. If you ask me, though, that bird will be dead by now. Out there in this weather. Aye, agrees the sailor, with a fatalistic nod. What can I get for you then? The publican asks. Why does this drownie know your client's song? Perhaps you can learn a little more about her. It's odd to see one indoors, odder still to see one given space to perform. You ask the publican to put you a pint of ale. On the house, he says, setting it down in front of you. So, we can ask the publican what he knows about the enigmatic drownie. This clearly isn't the first time she's entertained his regulars. Why does he let her in? Or we can ask the publican what he knows about the enigmatic drownie's song. Perhaps he knows something of its origins. Why does he let her in? I remembered her from when I was a lad, the publican explains, while wiping ale off the bar with a rag. She used to come in here and give us a song sometimes. And a voice like that, it's not something you forget. And then one day she comes back, but she's all, well, you know, drowned and such. The rescued sailor, still sitting at the bar, shakes his head and shivers a little. The publican continues. It's a bit unusual, but I can't afford a proper entertainer in here, can I? So I thought, why not? As long as she behaves herself. After tonight, though, if she thinks she can prey on my regulars like that, she's got another thing coming. The bar is now clean, but the publican begins jabbing at the damp patch rather aggressively. Aye, I've been too soft, giving her too many chances on the account of feeling sorry for her. Why does he feel sorry for her? The publican now beckons you closer to whisper in your ear. He's not sure of it, but he heard a rumour that the enigmatic drownie was once a mother who lost her child. We can ask what he knows about the song. Perhaps he knows something of the origins. The publican leans over the bar counter and rests his elbow there, as if settling in for a long chat. He expounds a variety of theories as to the origins of the song, before finally revealing his favourite. If you're saying that the same song is being sung uptown in theatres, I can't say as I'm surprised, he tells you. It wouldn't be the first time a musical song made its way down here to the docks. You must have heard it once and made it her own. It's a sad song. That's doubtless why she chose it. All the better for luring sailors. As for the possibility of la-di-da theatre ladies coming down here to copy songs from drownies, that'd be the day, he scoffs. Well, we can leave the dockside pub. I guess the current theory is that the contralto is the daughter of the drowning, maybe? Leave the dockside pub, you've learned everything you can. And we can retire to our lodgings, get some rest before returning to court tomorrow. You have an uneventful journey home, and a dreamless sleep before waking, ready for the next day of trial. The next morning you meet the rumpled barrister on the steps of the courthouse. A wordless greeting, a nod, and a brisk raise of the eyebrows renders any question of whether she has her voice today rather moot. She scrawls a note and hands it to you. Client's friend is here as arranged. I trust you have prepared this witness to testify. What the note fails to ask, however, is whether you followed up on the sailor's note from yesterday. Indeed, the rumpled barrister would have no idea about last night's encounter with the enigmatic drownie. Should you volunteer this information? Sure, why not? The existence of another potential author of the song complicates matters. There's a chance your client may have stolen the song after all. Surely your discovery puts the accused Contralto's new story in doubt. And while the oldest friend claims your client has been singing the song for years, how can we be sure she is telling the truth? After all, you point out, your client has been known to bribe witnesses. The rumpled barrister croaks something unintelligible, then takes your pencil to write once again in your notebook. Not relevant, hypothetical theft from drownie, not in issue. You follow your learned leader into the courthouse for the third day of trial. Are we to assume the lead barrister for the defence has not yet regained her voice? The judge's tired voice betrays a complete lack of surprise. Her learned junior will be examining the witness, yes? You affirm the judge's correct assumption about the barrister's voice, whilst ignoring his incorrect one about you being a member of the bar. Let's call the oldest friend to testify. The music hall manager you interviewed. So long as she sticks to what she told you last night, she should be able to swing the case in your favour. The oldest friend wears a dark grey dress, topped with a necktie to signify her status as a manageress. It's an intelligent choice of attire, likely to give the jury and judge the impression she is a serious, responsible woman of business. After asking her particulars, you move on to the question of how long she has known the accused Contralto. She responds in a clear, confident tone. It was almost 10 years ago. Our theatre was holding auditions for a new shoe and the defendant. The oldest friend's testimony is interrupted by loud sounds at the back of the court. The doors have been slammed open. This violent noise is followed by a series of squelchy thumps. Something damp draws near. Why does it suddenly smell like seawater? A dripping figure dressed in an admiral's garb plods its way toward the front of the courtroom. All watch in stunned silence. Even the judge is too astonished to decry the irregularity, as this damp admiral unfurls a mildewed scroll. In a deep basso profundo, he reads its contents aloud. A demand from the Fathom King that the trial be reconvened at the London docks. Moments later, a clerk rushes up to the bench to say something in the judge's ear. A sotto voce exchange between the two fellows before the judge finally addresses the courtroom. Well, members of the jury, I'm afraid we must comply with this demand as required of us by Article 57 of the Treaty of the Hut, my lord, offers the clerk. Well, let's repair to the docks. Join the entire court as it reconvenes on the wharf at Wolfstack Docks. You make your own way there after lunch and find an improvised court on the wharf in the open air. The wheels of justice turn fast when amply incentivized, it would seem. Temporary furniture has been provided to accommodate everyone in attendance. You suspect your defense table may have previously been a card table. Even more poorly served are the jury, members of which sit shivering on a motley collection of unmatched chairs. While the court, judge and jury will continue proceedings from these uncomfortable accommodations by the water, in the water, a new audience is in attendance. A group of drownies. They bob up and down in the swell from a steamer that has just departed for Mutton Island. Once he is assured that everyone required is present, the judge declares the court back in session. A salty gust of wind whips across the wharf, causing its occupants to shudder. The judge peers down at you from a high but rickety-looking replacement bench and invites you to resume your examination of the witness. But you are to do so economically. For we are all very cold and have no wish to become colder. His words are affirmed by fervent nodding among the jurors. Well, let's resume our examination of the oldest friend. She must be truly fond of the accused Contralto. Another witness might have decided the trip to the docks wasn't worth the bother. The oldest friend is more than happy to tell the jury when she first heard the contested song. As I said, she was one of the girls who came to the audition for a role in a show. She sang us that beautiful song about the bird. I snapped her up right away. A voice like hers comes only once in a generation. The oldest friend then tells of the accused Contralto's reluctance to sing the song in public. It took me years to convince her to perform her lovely bird song for audiences. She turns to the judge. The song takes a lot out of her, emotionally. Good Lord, whatever is it now? The judge exclaims, having paid no attention to the witness testimony. It is the enigmatic drownie. She is standing motionless a few yards behind you. She is staring up at the judge, but doesn't speak. The judge stares down at the drownie. The drownie stares back. If this deadlock is to be broken, you will have to do something. Well, we can proceed with our examination of the witness. If you wrap up the case, perhaps the enigmatic drownie will do nothing that undermines your client's defense. Or we can call upon the enigmatic drownie to testify. She is the key to this case. Why else would the Fathom King have hauled you all down here? Let's call on the drownie. I'm interested in the story here. If your lordship pleases, the defense would like to call one final witness to the stand, you say, swiveling around to point. that drownie. This is met with gasps from the makeshift jury box, which wobbles a little from the excitement. One jury member appears to swoon in her chair, but her fellow jury members are too engrossed in this dramatic shift in proceedings to notice. The rumpled barrister, meanwhile, bangs her head angrily on the table. Her attempt to speak ends in a fit of coughing, leaving her face purple with both pulmonary obstruction and annoyance. "Very well," says the judge, casting a glance over the ramshackle outdoor court he currently presides over. "Given the highly irregular turn in these proceedings have already taken, I will allow it." The enigmatic drownie shuffles forward toward the witness box. As she passes you, you can hear her singing softly, but you cannot make out the words. Onlookers whisper to their neighbours and shuffle in their seats for a better view. All except the accused Contralto. Seated in the row behind you, she is unnaturally still in her chair, her eyes fixed on the enigmatic drownie. Her face is vacant, stupefied, a look you recognise from the Zaylers you encountered last night at the pub. So we can block the accused Contralto's view of the drownie. If your client flings herself into the Z, how will you win the case? Ensure the enigmatic drownie that your client have a clear view of each other. Perhaps it'll encourage truths to emerge, even if such truths may not assist your client. Let's block the view. If you move your chair and sit up straight, you can block the line of sight between the defendant and the witness. Her view of the enigmatic drownie now obscured, the accused Contralto is now distracted. She blinks as if roused from a daze. Glancing first to you for reassurance, she finally settles herself and begins watching the jury anxiously. You rise to begin your examination of the witness. Your request that she state her name for the record is met with a mute stare. Can she confirm her current place of residence? Somewhere in the Under-Z, presumably. Again, this is met with silence. The judge now reminds you that everyone is very cold. He urges you to proceed to substantive questions. Well, we can ask her to sing her song. Like the accused Contralto, the subject of her song is a bird. This will show the aggrieved soprano's cat song is unlikely to be the original version. This time, the enigmatic drownie answers you. He begins to sing. "My little bird, she sings so sweet, a voice so pure 'twould make you weep." You raise your hand for the witness to stop singing before a suddenly glassy-eyed jury attempts to jump in the Z. Among those who have managed to keep clear heads, eyebrows have raised in recognition. It is the contested song. Addressing the jury directly, you ask them to pay particular attention to the words. The witness sings your client's version of the song, but what about a lonely songbird? Is there any mention of the aggrieved soprano's cat? No, there is not. Jury members nod in agreement. You must ask your questions without delay. Each time there is a lull, the judge frowns and shivers dramatically. He makes a point of pulling his gown close. Well, we can ask her to continue her song. The enigmatic drownie's version of the song contains additional verses. Their words will show there is more to this case than a simple matter of theft. You invite the enigmatic drownie to resume her song, but interrupt her after the first line of the final verse. Some jury members are showing dangerous signs of entrancement, bug-eyed and immobile in their seats. Others, moved to tears, now have their handkerchiefs out. You describe the final words of the enigmatic drownie song, how the talented bird eventually flew away, never to be seen again, leaving its mistress stricken with grief. This tragic end to the story, you point out, is missing from both the song sung by the accused Contralto and that of her accuser, the aggrieved soprano. Those in the jury who are not busy blowing their noses are now according you their full attention. You have proved that there is more to the origins of this mysterious song than the prosecution have claimed. Meanwhile, the enigmatic drownie stands silent and still. A limp, dripping hand stretches out before her towards the accused Contralto. Seeing this, the singer bows her head and covers her face with her hands. Let's ask the enigmatic drownie about the bird in her song. It is clear that the little bird is some kind of metaphor. For a lost daughter, perhaps? Your question elicits a chorus of gasps from the jury box. Mumbled speculation follows. Could the bird in the song really be this drownie's daughter? The enigmatic drownie's head lolls up and down like the head of a shaken mop. Though the movement is unnatural, it's unmistakably a nod. You now turn to address the astonished faces of the jury. You assert that the witness's wordless testimony, together with the events described in her song, show that the enigmatic drownie was once a mother who bore a great tragedy: the disappearance of her cherished daughter. The loss of a child was doubtless so painful it drove her to take her own life, and thus became a lamentable, lifeless creature the jury sees before them today. "My lord," the prosecuting counsel rises to protest, "this is pure speculation." The judge, who has been listening attentively, dismisses the lawyer's objection with a wave of his hand and bids you continue. Let's ask the enigmatic drownie whether she recognizes anyone at the trial. If it is revealed that she knows someone here, it might explain her interest in the case. The enigmatic drownie raises her arm and points a dripping finger in the direction of your client, who responds with a gasp and a short wail. Heads in the jury box swivel sharply to stare at the accused contralto. All eyes are now on her as she quivers and whimpers in her chair, her hands clasped to her face in shame. "My lord, I fail to see the relevance," the prosecuting counsel protests. "Indeed," says the judge. "While the fact the defendant's fame has spread as far as the undersea is no doubt impressive, I must confess to being unable to see where the defense is going with this line of questioning." The accused contralto is whimpering in her chair. The judge, already impatient with the proceedings, is looking at her, shaking his head. Let's answer the prosecution's objection. A puzzled frown on the judge's face suggests he requires further explanation. It takes only a little prompting for the judge to grasp the relevance of this connection between the enigmatic drownie and your client. "You mean to say that this Z creature is the defendant's mother?" The judge reflects on this for a moment, then scowls. "And I suppose you intend to suggest this familial bond can somehow illuminate the true origin of the song?" "Yes, I see now where you might be going with this, though it remains to be seen whether you will get there. Your closing argument will have to be convincing." The judge now turns to your opposing counsel and invites him to submit closing arguments on behalf of the prosecution. As the prosecuting barrister rises from his chair, a moist gust of wind whips across the wharf. Members of the jury pull their coats and shawls about them, girding themselves for the final phase of an unusually chilly trial. "Members of the jury," the prosecuting barrister begins, "I must ask you to ignore the theatrical distractions you have witnessed today and instead focus on the plain facts of the case." The prosecution's closing arguments are mercifully brief. It is your turn to speak once more. As you rise to do so, the court bailiff hands you a note. It's from the rumpled barrister, who is now absent from the defense table. Well, we may as well open the note. Might she actually have some last-minute insight to contribute to the case? The judge grants you a moment to read the rumpled barrister's note. The heading bears an instruction to read the note aloud to the court, but it would be unwise to do so without first knowing what it says. The defense is, according to the note, no longer appearing in this case for the accused contralto. The rumpled barrister has been retained by the Fathom King. Where is your erstwhile leader? A clerk ducks to retrieve a document, blown into a puddle. Over his head you spot the rumpled barrister, squatting by the edge of the wharf and conferring with the floating drownies. So we have three options. We can argue that the enigmatic drownie song proves your client's innocence. The song originates from the accused contralto's mother. As such, your client is entirely innocent of the charge of stealing it from the aggrieved soprano. We can agree that the song has been twice stolen. Both the accused contralto and the aggrieved soprano are at fault. Arguing this will mean abandoning your client, but perhaps you'll be arguing in favour of the truth. Or we can announce your change of client. You do, after all, work for the rumpled barrister, although it must be noted she hasn't paid you a penny. Alright, well, let's just follow the barrister. You announce that the defense counsel has been retained by the Fathom King. In accordance with a certain article of maritime law, you are now bringing the case against both the accused contralto and aggrieved soprano. This sensational turn of events provokes an eruption of excited murmurs among the jury. The entire court is now animated, with the exception of the judge, who has leaned forward to cradle his brow in his hands. Moments later, a sudden surge in the nearby Z crashes over the edge of the wharf. A few inches higher, it might have drenched the makeshift court. This rouses the judge from his apparent despair, and in a brisk manner he declares a mistrial. "Due to gross procedural irregularities," he adds, erecting a stern look at you in particular, his tone waspish with annoyance. "I am sorry to have wasted your time, members of the jury, but it would seem His Complexity the Fathom King seeks to profit from this case, and according to law, it is within his right to do so. This is now a matter for the civil court." The wharf is emptying of people. Court bailiffs have enlisted dock workers to help them. The judge's declaration for a mistrial has thrust your client from the minds of the courtroom. The sovereign of the Drownies, seeking leverage in London's courts. Is the Z not large enough? Regardless of larger machinations that she and her family are enmeshed in, it seems your client, well, ex-client now, is free to go. But the accused contralto is not listening. "She came back for me," he wails softly. "After what I did. She came back for me. I can't abandon her again." The enigmatic drownie begins to amble toward the edge of the wharf. The singer rises from her seat in panic. "Mother, I'm coming with you." We can convince her not to join her mother using the enigmatic drownie's song. Those lost verses suggest this isn't what her mother would want. Can you recall the final verse? Will it be enough? Or we can just let her join her mother. It's clear she misses her mother and that she leads a lonely life here. After all, her best friend is her manager. London hasn't been kind to her. Perhaps the Z will be better. Let's convince her not to jump into the Z. You manage to intercept your former client, who is now only a few yards behind the enigmatic drownie. Docile and dazed, she listens as you describe what you remember of the final verse of the enigmatic drownie's song. Her mother's regrets and her wish for her daughter to live free and share her music with audiences far and wide. Shaking with emotion, the accused contralto looks at you and nods in acknowledgement. The enigmatic drownie has now reached the water's edge. The accused contralto, now standing still, watches on. The mother turns to stare at her daughter one last time before dropping into the Z, the dark water slowly covering her head, like the closing of a flower. Let's leave the docks. Case is closed. Your work is done. It's just a pity the rumpled barrister failed to reward your efforts. The rumpled barrister is still at the edge of the wharf, her back turned towards you, while in close conference with the Fathom King's drownie delegation. Was she really working with the Fathom King to sue the two singers in civil court? And what might the king seek to gain from this? Justice for the enigmatic drownie? He is, after all, one of his subjects. When your erstwhile leader turns and sees you watching her, he waves you away. It's clear she has no intention of employing you further, or even paying you for the work you've already done. Meanwhile, an alliance has quickly formed between your client, the accused contralto, and the aggrieved soprano. They are now engaged in a close conference of their own, one that does not invite interruption. A clerk approaches to collect your borrowed gown and wig for the last time. With a kind nod, he wishes you well before you go on your way. Well, let's play the epilogue. A penny for a song. You are out walking when your eye is caught by a bill pasted on the wall. It advertises a music hall show called Drowned But Not Out, headlined by a certain contralto you used to know. A comedy by the look of it. You are leaning forward to read more when a voice calls out to you. It is a bedraggled-looking singer begging a penny from you in exchange for a song. Perhaps you recognize her. The tune she hums is somehow familiar. So we can either walk on by, you've had enough of singers for a while. We can throw her a penny, you can spare it, or warn the singer to move along, or else you'll call the constables and report the theft of a song. You can have some money. Have a penny. You drop a penny into the woman's grubby palm, and she sings for you. Her voice cracking with emotion, she intones a melody honest in its simplicity, unadorned by any showy ornamentation. The lyrics, untroubled by mawkish sentiment, are raw with candour. They tell of how a cat with a beautiful voice ran away from his mistress after she compelled him to lie for her. The song ends with regret of his mistress and the loneliness she feels now he is gone. There can be no doubt of it. This song is true and original. As you go on your way, an urchin runs by and shovels a wet gift into your palm. It smells of the Z. This marks the end of the exceptional story, The Stolen Song. We got an Waneric Pearl. And that is the end of July's exceptional story. I thoroughly enjoyed that. I am a sucker for anything to do with a courtroom though, and the drowny twist ending at the end was glorious. I loved it. Brilliant. Well written and well enjoyed. So thank you all very much for watching. Please like, subscribe, let me know what you think. Your comments are greatly appreciated. Thank you again to the members of the channel. It really does help me keep making these videos. It is a great way to support the channel and I really do appreciate it. But as always, I'll see you next time.